This is about a strange German letter that causes problems not just for students of German, but for some native speakers as well. It begins with the name. Some people say it should be called scharfes S, others that it should be called ess-zett. My money is on ess-zett as the correct name, and I mention this now not in order to start an argument, but because that's what I'm going to be calling it in this video. It's not a letter that you'll find anywhere in the alphabet, and it is just a different way of writing a double S under certain circumstances. So if you're looking up a word in a dictionary and it has an ess-zett in it, you'll find it sorted as if it had a double S instead. Oh, and in Switzerland and Liechtenstein they don't use the ess-zett at all, they always use a double S. So we probably shouldn't be calling it a letter, except that all the official reference works call it a letter, so officially it's a letter. So how do you know when you're supposed to use an ess-zett and when you're supposed to use a double S? Well, the 1996 spelling reform made this very easy. You write a double S after a short vowel, Kuss. You write an ess-zett after a long vowel, Fuß, or after a diphthong, which is two vowels that together make one sound, Preußen. The exception is if the second S is at the start of another syllable. In that case, it's not a double S, it's two single S's, one after the other. If you don't have an ess-zett key on your keyboard, or if the typeface you're using doesn't have an ess-zett character, you may instead type a double S. According to the official rules, this is actually incorrect unless you have no option, but even in Germany, not everybody follows the rules. But under no circumstances must you ever write a B. There is a very important difference between Scheibe and Scheisse. Also, there is no capital ess-zett. Well, there sort of is, and for the last 200 years there have been campaigns to get it officially adopted, but so far without success. So officially, if you want to write an ess-zett in capitals, you have to write a double S. But more about that later. Surnames sometimes follow their own rules, and so do some place names. Before 1996, the rules were a little bit more complicated and the ess-zett was used more often. You will sometimes see the old spelling rules in use, for example, on old street signs that just haven't been replaced yet. But if it's a double S, why is it called ess-zett? Well, what we know is that it began life as a ligature. A ligature is two letters which have been combined into one character. So now let me introduce you to this. This is called a long S, and it was in fact the original form for the lowercase s. The problem is that it looks very much like an F, and this causes problems. Here, for example, is an S where there should be an F. So, over time it came to be replaced by the newfangled round S. But in German the long S kept going and kept company with the round S. There were complicated rules about when you should use a long S and when you should use a round S, but in most cases you would write a round S if it was the last letter of a syllable and a long S everywhere else. This was actually quite useful because it meant that it could serve as a pronunciation guide for words like Naschen and Näschen. But now the long S is no longer used, and so modern sign writers working with historic typefaces very often get it wrong. In the late 13th century, the ess-zett first appeared as a ligature of the long S and the Z. That was in Gothic script. It was another 200 years before it appeared in Latin script, but then it was a ligature of the long S and the round S. What happened? We don't know, but we can guess. It seems that back in the day the SS and the ess-zett represented two very slightly different sounds. See if you can hear the difference. S, sh, s, sh. If you can't, don't worry. Medieval Germans also had trouble with this, and so over time the sh sound came to be pronounced the same as s. And then later generations couldn't remember when to write SS and when to write ess-zett. To this day, in some typefaces, the ess-zett looks like an S and a Z, and in others it looks like two S's. It's now the same letter, called an ess-zett, but representing a double S. Some people say that the alternative for the ess-zett should not be ss, it should be ess-zett. Historically, they are half right. And it is true that there is a crucial difference between words like Maßen and Massen. Huh? Before the 1996 spelling reforms, the rules said that you could use ess-zett if doing so helped to avoid this kind of ambiguity. But now the rules say it's always ss. But in any case, if you're writing to an address in Germany and you don't have an ess-zett key on your keyboard, never ever type a B. The word is Straße, not Strabe. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about this channel. Coming up, some links to videos that you might find useful, but before then, if you'd like to send me a postcard, here's the address. That's all very nice, but what are you supposed to do if you need to type an umlaut and you don't have a German keyboard with special keys for the umlaut? Now, this is a copy of Martin Luther's famous translation of the Bible. Under no Come on.